evening, good to have you with us on this edition of The Last Word. Two very, very important topics lined up for you tonight. In some ways, they're also linked. But before we actually debate the anti-terror law and the amendments that have been made to it, first up, let's turn our attention to what is happening in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And our intent tonight is to not have a loud rhetorical debate. It's not about nationals and anti-nationals and patriots and lobbies, but it's actually to try and understand with the facts at hand about Kashmir. What does this mean? Should the citizens be concerned? There is a lot of rumor mongering happening right now, a lot of speculation. So we'll have some experts telling us how they see this situation. Now, just to put it in perspective, there have been reports about additional troop deployment. Last week, the Home Ministry sanctioned 10,000 additional troops to be moved to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Reports then suggested that an additional 28,000 troops are now being prepared and moved towards the state. Why such large amount of deployment has been a big question now for a couple of days. Today in the afternoon, the army along with Jammu and Kashmir police held a joint briefing. They gave us details about how they're fighting terror, how they're maintaining the law and order situation in the valley, how there is a threat perception and that terrorists seem to be plotting a strike on the Amarnath Yatra, and how they're doing all that they can to ensure that nothing untoward happens. Soon after, there was a circular issued by the State Home Department advising the Amarnath Yatris to pack up and go home. Clearly, the administration and the security forces are not taking any chances at this point of time. But these developments has triggered a lot of speculation even in the valley. Before I go across to our panelists, let me quickly bring in Fareed joining us from Srinagar. Fareed, in the morning you were telling us how because there is this movement, troop movement and a lot of activity around, people are not taking any chances. They've begun to, stock up on essential supplies. What is the sentiment on ground for the citizens?
Well, the citizens obviously are in a lot of distress. There are speculations, there is unease, there is uncertainty, and that really has become a destiny of Kashmiris. I mean, if you remember, similar scenes in similar situations witnessed 4-5 months back when that Pulwama attack took place, and then the kind of war build-up, and every day there was a circular, and people were wondering what is going to happen next. But at least at that time, they knew that there were Indo-Pak tensions, and probably something may happen on the border, across the border. But this time around, everyone was of the opinion that things are going fine. Amarnath Yatra was also going fine. No terror-related incident. You had a law and order situation which was pretty much under control, as was said by the DGP, by the general in the joint press briefing. So what really has led to this? Why this sudden troop movement when already thousands of troops, extra troops, additional troops are here to secure the Amarnath Yatras? Why this additional deployment? Why these orders one after the other? And then today, finally, this order of advisory, which, let me tell you, Tanvi, is unprecedented. I mean, I've seen Amarnath Yatra, covered Amarnath Yatra in worse times when militancy was at its peak. But at that time, never ever this order came. But today, that order was out. And importantly, the important point here is that not only Yatris, but even tourists came in the domain of that order, where they said that not only Yatris, but tourists also need to immediately pack up their bags and go back. So obviously, this kind of an order would further raise the levels of tension and chaos. And that's why, as you rightly said, there was panic buying, petrol pumps, there were queues, people just stocking everything that they can get because they feel that some big decision is around the corner as far as Kashmir is concerned, and Government of India is planning something, and possibly this is a groundwork, homework being done in the form of this deployment. And in fact, there is some time of trouble that is coming, and probably curfews, restrictions that they have seen in the past as well. So that experience led to this panic, and people
so very
even
quickly,
now don't know what is going to happen next, just that they're trying to stock up and trying to prepare.
is just a couple of less than 2 weeks away. There's usually a lot of heightened activity between India and Pakistan. Attempts are made, for infiltration. Security is stepped up ahead of Independence Day. But you are saying what we are witnessing right now is nowhere close to that.
Well, Tanvi, let me tell you, there are inherent contradictions in what the government is saying and what these orders, on the other hand, are saying. Now, today, even the joint press briefing, the police said all is well. It is just the fatigue factor that is ensuring that the troops here who have been on duty since ages need to get rest, and that's why these deployments are coming. But on the other hand, while they were trying to assure people and assure us that everything is under control, they have militancy under control, they've got these IEDs, they've got these people, Jaish people. On the other hand, he got this order that there is some very serious threat against the yatra. But then what raised the doubts of the people is the fact that there were the tourists also that came in that domain, which was unprecedented.
Okay.
So clearly people think that there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. And as far as your question on 15th August is concerned, already we know that borders are hot. In fact, on the Kashmir side, after a long time, we've seen areas like Tangdar, Gurez, Uri, there is in fact firing that is going on, and even artillery shells have been used to target this side. So clearly borders, there is unease there as well, but a lot more unease in the hinterland if you talk of the Kashmir Valley. Tanvi.
All right, Fari, thanks so much for joining us and for constantly bringing us updates from the valley. Appreciate your inputs. Let me say good evening to our panelists, Maruf Raza, strategic affairs expert and a consulting editor to our network, Manu Pabi, senior editor with Economic Times, Brigadier Hemant Mahajan, and Shabnam Lone, lawyer and an activist, joining us this evening. Let me start with you, Manu. What have you picked up? There are multiple, kinds of speculations that are happening, and I'm not going to go into the rumor mongering part, but there are definite reports that suggest that Intel has picked up activity across the border, that there is a very serious threat perception. I'm not too sure if Manu is able to hear me. Okay, we're just going to fix that. We're just going to fix that and go back to him. Maruf, let me bring that to you. This troop movement that's happened, in your own view, what does this suggest? Is it seriously simply relieving those who are on duty?
Well, it seems like a bit of a coincidence when troop movements have suddenly taken place at the scale it is. 25,000 troops or more, as being reflected in some elements of the media, is not a small number. Just to give you a relative context, America currently has about 15,000 plus minus troops deployed in Afghanistan, when Afghanistan is exactly not a very peaceful place to be in. So we already have troops operating there, army, paramilitary, police, etc. The government, therefore, needs to come out with a very clear set of public relation initiatives where it clarifies this position as to why specifically troops are being moved. Is it to relieve troops who are tired and stressed? That is a strong possibility because the paramilitary forces do operate under very, very trying circumstances. So does the army, but the army tends to manage its turnover and relief of troops much better than the other organizations because the army has a much, much more specific manpower intensive approach. The second thing is that if you're inducting these kind of troops, where are you getting these troops from? Because all over the country, the paramilitary forces, particularly the CRPF, have been stretched for years and years. So suddenly to pull out these troops, there must be some level of urgency on the part of the government's assessment which requires these troops. To my mind, there are threefold. One is the requirement of ensuring that the local elections take place well and smoothly. Secondly is to ensure that the flag hoisting in the Republic Day takes place uninterrupted. And third is to infuse the operations that are already on the ground with more troops and really finally sound the death knell for terrorist groups that seem to be operating and are on the back foot because of the number of kills and the number of successes that the armed forces have registered in the last 6 months or more. So it could be any of those. But if you're inducting more troops in, my question is, why is suddenly so difficult to implement the Amarnath Yatra?
Yes.
After all, this is not the first time that the Amarnath Yatris have faced threats. So what is it that is new and so alarming that you are not going to be able to give them the security that historically, at least in the last 3 decades of insurgency, by and large, they've got? Now, the
Yes.
problem about firing
So,
increasing, as Mir was bringing out all along the LOC, that is a strong possibility because Pakistan could resort to that after the nudge they've received from President Trump that he's willing to mediate.
right.
Because once tensions go up, it gives reason enough for Pakistan to call the Americans in and say, find us a solution to this. The solutions are not going to be able to be provided by Americans
Yes.
because they
So,
themselves don't understand
Maruf,
what the
it's
problem is. The
interesting you
problem is
raise that
very
point.
complicated. It's external and internal.
It's interesting you raise that point, and you're the second voice today, who's bringing up this angle. I was also reading, what Nitin Gokhale, again a very respected voice when it comes to the, these affairs. He's written a detailed thread on Twitter, and he seems to suggest the same, that at a time when, and today itself, President Donald Trump again spoke about being ready to mediate. There are intel reports that suggest there is a build-up of troops and terrorists across the border, and it could just be one of those things that Maruf, you were simply mentioning. So that's a possibility. The other possibility, like you said, that the government wants a flag to be hoisted in every part of the state this Independence Day. Then there is the possibility that it's simply a time where there are more attempts made for infiltration, threats to the Amarnath Yatra, and the controversial 35A or 370 may be on the radar of the government. All of this is being talked about and reported. Let me ask Manu Pabi what he's picked up from his sources. Manu?
No, so I agree with what Maruf was saying earlier and what Nitin has tweeted. Of course, the Trump-Imran Khan talks have they are the, the elephant in the room. They are the reason that a lot of things have happened. But see, calling off an Amarnath Yatra in the middle of it, through a letter which is very urgent in nature, that shows that most probably, and that's what we are also hearing, is that specific intelligence inputs have been received of an imminent attack on the yatris or on tourists, a spectacular attack, so as to say, on something which is of great interest to India. And there are very different ways of handling it. One is of course to increase security, but increasing security can only be to a certain measure. Remember, there are already thousands of troops there who are securing the Amarnath Yatris, but in the face of an imminent threat, which is very specific of nature, which can possibly be so threatening that it can't be stopped, this was a step taken, was to pull them out. So yes, we have been picking up an heightened sense of security, a heightened sense of insecurity in the sense of what the other side is planning to do, and that is the reason why they have taken this very drastic step of taking off people. But the question is, there have been a lot of other speculations. People are talking about some policy changes, something to do with the state of Kashmir. You don't do that in the middle of Amarnath season. You do not suddenly uproot thousands of, pilgrims and thousands of tourists just because you want to bring around a policy change. You can do that at a time of your choosing. Why not do it in November or December or January where the snow is set and people can't come out to protest? You don't take a policy decision of that sort, which is in your own hands, and inconvenience so many people. So I would imagine the threat that is there and imminent is something which is not in the control of the government, which is in the control of a third state actor, which is the terror groups. And it has to be of a very serious nature. Remember, after Pulwama, there was one more IED attack. And even after that, there were some inputs received of a high-profile attack being planned on Indian armed forces, on the CRPF, something to a similar extent. And, measures were taken to counter that. So the government seems to be receiving some credible inputs, which we are still not sure where they're coming from exactly, but they seem to be of a nature in which they have to pull out these people.
Okay, and there are definite reports that are emerging about the number of companies and the number of troops who have been given orders to move in. Shabnam Lone, before I come to you, let me bring in Brigadier Mahajan as well on that aspect. Brigadier Mahajan, this kind of troop movement that is being reported, how do you view it? Can it be simply for something internal that the government may be anticipating, as Manu was saying, one of the reports, and there is a lot of fear and speculation also being fueled by politicians in the valley about Article 35A and Article 370 being repealed. But does this kind of preparation show that we are anticipating something internal or an external threat?
This question that you have asked me as to why so much of troops have come inside, before me you gave a longish introduction by Maruf. He gave a lot of reasons right from A to Z as to what would be the reasons, and then Manu came and also gave reasons, internal reasons, external reasons. I mean, whatever I could have said have already been said from one extreme to another.
Yes.
But however, what I would say is there is a problem these days, today the wars or anti-terrorist operations are being fought in a bedroom, Since there is a proliferation of social media and a proliferation of TV media, you get a ball-by-ball commentary of what's happening around, Actually, whether so many troops are required or not required, there's a Northern Army commander who's there, who's reasonably competent, I take it, more competent than me, who can decide as to how much troops does he require. There are people sitting there, so their assessment, how much threat are the Pakistani regulars coming there, has the Pakistani special forces, what they do once in a while is they put some of their people dressed as terrorists, they come inside. Some weapons have been found which are generally used by the Pakistani army and not used by the terrorists. So have any SSG people come inside in the gap of terrorists? Are they going to target the Amarnath Yatris with the help of sniper rifles? And protection against sniper rifles, instead of getting those 27 companies that you're talking about, even if you get 270 companies, you cannot protect Yatris from, let me tell you, from the sniper attacks if they take place. Because at sniper attacks, you sit 2 kilometers away and shoot a person who's down there. And there are, at any point of time, there are thousands of Yatris who are moving either up and down. Some of them stay at night at the camps. So protecting them, even if you get 70,000 troops, is not going to be easy, because hitting one target, 2 target, 3 target from a hidden position is always easy. So maybe one thing is that since you want to protect their lives, so therefore you are trying to take them out from there. But even now they'll take 2 to 3 days to return back to their bus stands, return back to the railway stations, return back to the airfields, So I hope they get protected on their way out also. So really speaking, there are internal reasons, there are external reasons, but what I would suggest is, there's a hype being given. All the TV channels, there are 700 TV channels talking of news,
Yes.
So one of the ways, if Kashmiris want to reduce tension of their own, they should switch off their WhatsApp, switch off from the social media. Do not follow, for God's sake, do not follow tweets by Umar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti. If you want to raise your blood pressure high, well, the choice is yours. If I was a Kashmiri staying in the valley, I would switch off all the WhatsApp, all the social media things.
No, so let me ask you.
News only once a day.
Okay.
And not going for speculations, because as many people, as many argue.
Yes, no, Brigadier Mahajan, let me say this. I agree with you when it comes to rumor monging and speculating, not just on this issue, and the kind of, I know, even in family WhatsApp groups, amazing speculations and, wild theories are being shared right now. But and I want to come back to you on what you read of the specific kind of troops who are being moved. But before I do that, Shabnam Lone has patiently heard everybody. Shabnam Lone, go ahead, please.
First of all, let me refute Brigadier Mahajan when he says that all WhatsApp groups, they should be switched off. Sir, I would say that they should be switched off in Delhi too. Everywhere throughout the country.
Yes.
Don't specifically point out for Kashmir, sir.
No, that's exactly what I said. Correct.
Now, first of all, let me point out, for me,
Yes.
Kashmir always remains, was and will remain a very complex issue. For me, Kashmir is a military political issue. For me, Kashmir is a boiling political cauldron. And for me, I will always say it is a latent political volcano. Now, if you just generalize it and put it so easily, like the BJP is saying that it's our political manifesto, we abrogate 370 and 35A. This is a message from here. Please do it. Kindly do it. Now, if you are using the army for abrogation of Article 370 or 35A, obviously there is something very wrong within the whole system of having understood the Kashmir imbroglio.
But Shabnam,
Now, if you say the yatris are not safe, now please let me finish, Tanvi. Now, this is a message from Kashmir. The yatra, this is a journey of faith, and our yatris need to be secure. The state needs to secure the life and liberty of every yatri because it is an inalienable part of our social structure, of our inclusive ethos in Kashmir. Every yatri needs to be safe, and if anyone is doing anything to harm them, the Kashmiri would be the first one to rise against those people.
right.
Having said that, this army build-up, I'm not personally worried about it, but there is a lot of fear-mongering going on.
Yes.
Not only in Kashmir. Yes, I agree, some politicians are fear-mongering, but the fear-mongering is in New Delhi also. The fear-mongering is from some right-wing extremists. I've been on many shows with them. The main message that is being sent across to the Kashmiris, now look here, Kashmiris, our army is going there. Now let me state, the Indian army is one of the finest armies in the world. Indian army is not the personal fiefdom of any political party or any
Okay, so
right-wing extremist
Shabnam, you
groups,
know it and I
that
know
they're
it. Tonight
giving
we're
an
not sitting
idea
and debating.
that we are the ones.
And we're not sitting and debating on what the government's overall policy for the valley needs to be. We're sitting and discussing right now what the current situation is. Firstly, I have a problem with many people jumping to the conclusion that this is what it is. The army has been sent in because they're going to repeal Article 35A and Article 370, despite the fact that, you know, the police of Jammu and Kashmir and the army have come out and said there is a serious threat perception. The government has not given any other indication. But you are also a lawyer, Shabnam Lone. Let me ask you, is this how it works? That you send in your army and the constitution changes? There is a law in place in this country, including for Jammu and Kashmir. It's not that simple, is it?
You see, the question is of integration and imposition. The question is that Kashmir have had a very complex past, and do you impose or do you tell the Kashmiri now that look here, if you don't behave up to a particular script, now this is the way I'm going to handle it. Let me assure you, maybe it will have results for a brief period, a lull, but I'm telling you it will not have the desired impact or the effect. This is not how you integrate. This is not how you win hearts and minds. No, you can't do it. Now, BJP is entitled to its view in that it says 35A and 370 is to be abrogated. I agree. They have every right to say that.
But there is a legal process to it.
The Honorable Home Minister says that we have to abrogate.
But there is a legal and a constitutional process to it.
The BJP manifesto is subservient to the constitution of this country. It is subservient to the law of the land. So, if they say that we'll abrogate it, I'm telling for everyone who ever is hearing me, even in Kashmir, it will be subject to judicial review.
Exactly.
Let them abrogate
There is
it.
judiciary
And
in
there is
this
a
country.
message from me.
Okay.
Why are you threatening people
Yes,
while abrogate
so
it?
my limited
Kindly
point
abrogate
was,
it.
my limited point was
Abrogate
that,
it.
Shabnam Lone, and you said that there is a judiciary in this country which will, and you know, and if rules are not followed, if laws are not followed, if procedure is not followed, the judiciary can look at it. Manu wanted to come in. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I just want to address the question of these troops being there. I mean, you know, like was brought out earlier, India is not a rogue nation. India is a nation that lives by the laws, and troops are going in. What is the problem with troops going there? I mean, the question is, what are the troops doing? Are they doing unlawful activities? Are they bringing down, you know, force on the people? No, they're there for security, and they're there for, you know, ensuring the locals who are also Indians, you know, remember it's all India, right? They are there for the protection of the Indian citizen. So this whole rumor mongering on troops being there and what will they do? I mean, come on, there are already lakhs of troops in J&K, and they've been there for years. And these additional troops, you know, questioning the validity of those troops there and their intent and their motives, I mean, I think that's a bit over the top. And if they are there, and we should try to believe, at least for now, the government, what they're saying is that they are for law and order and they're rotational troops. I think that's their job. And till the time, it comes to a situation that these troops have been brought in to, like, take on to martial law or something, it's a bit too premature to, debate on things like, oh, they're coming here, they're threatening us, and all
Well,
those things.
I heard Mehbooba Mufti just a short while ago, and she said,
please
there
let
is
me
so
come
much
in.
of fear,
Not
there is so
threatening
much
us.
of panic in the minds of people. Now, I understand, even for people in Kashmir who have grown up seeing guns and bombs going off around them, men in uniform carrying these guns, and they've grown up in that kind of a setup, even for them, if there is all this troop movement, questions will be asked. And they can ask those questions. But when politicians come along and say, oh, you know what, this is everything to do with taking away your freedom, taking away your integrity, taking away, everything that we've given to you under Article 370 and 35A, and this is what the BJP is doing, that's unfair. Let's wait for those facts to emerge. If it's a genuine terror threat, and if it's a genuine, intel input, those troops are there only to protect people. Those troops are there only to keep the army out. So let me bring in Brigadier Mahajan here, and then Maruf, I'll come to you.
These are difficult times.
Brigadier Mahajan.
These are difficult times.
What we have seen right
times.
now is additional movement of paramilitary troops and central armed police force coming in. It's not so much of the army that's, moved in with their tanks and guns. Does that signify, what kind of threat we are looking at?
Yes, definitely. Before me, Manu had brought it out that the troops are there to protect the people of Jammu and Kashmir. There should be no doubt on that. The troops are governed by certain laws. We are one of the most human armed forces as well as human police forces going around, and they do not carry out any human rights violation or something. So any genuine person, he should have no fear in his mind. As I was telling you, the best way is to keep away from all these discussions and debates that take place and remain happily, because if something is going to happen, you will be informed. If you start getting this ball by ball commenting, you start debating every move, what Mr. X said, what Mr. Y said, in reply to Mr. Z, Mr. A said this, and Mr. reply to B, C said this. So this kind of a trail goes on, and you can keep on commenting on every issue, every person who said something, but it doesn't lead you anywhere. Your question whether the troops are, even if a larger number of troops come there, it is not going to cause any problem to the people of Kashmir. That one can be very sure about. So what are they worried about? They should stop falling prey to rumor mongering. They should stop falling prey to excess, kind of analysis. In fact, what has happened today on Kashmir Valley issue is that there's a paralysis by over-analysis. It has been analyzed so much that I personally feel for the next 6 months you should not discuss anything on these issues at all. There is nothing left to be discussed. I don't know what can be discussed. The same points keep on getting repeated again and again, pros and cons and whatnot. The point that you started off with, why so much of troops? Well, the security apparatus there, led by the Northern Army Commander, thinks that there's a threat in the valley, for which he requires troops, and his thing has been accepted by the Home Ministry. So be it. If his security acquisition is not up to the mark, if there is some other reasons, I suppose time will tell us in the days to come.
Okay, very quickly, I'm running out of time, Brigadier Mahajan, so sorry I'm interrupting you.
Troops are there to protect you if at all additional troops have been inducted.
But I just wanted a quick word in from Maruf as well before I wrap this up, Maruf. If the government goes ahead with its plan of unfurling and hoisting the Indian flag in every part of the state, including those which are extremely sensitive in the valley, if, in high-profile visitors and dignitaries, the topmost, want to go to the valley for that event, would one anticipate backlash? Is there why you would see some additional security deployment as well?
Well, that is one of the reasons that is being cited. But please understand that as far as your security grid is concerned in the state of Jammu and Kashmir and the valley in particular, and the efforts with the troops that have been there in the past over the last few decades, more than 2 lakh plus troops are deployed in the valley, things have plateaued out. We've not gone beyond keeping the situation in a relatively tense but somewhat managed violent situation. Now, if you really want to go beyond that and provide an extra shot in the arm to the security apparatus, you need more troops. But the government needs to come out, and this has always been a shortcoming in J&K, that, you know, the right arm doesn't let the left arm know what it is doing. So the government on one side issues these security instructions. On the other side, it doesn't engage with the public, the politicians, and everybody else in the media to tell them why they are specifically doing this. Now, if this has come to light, there is a certain amount of concern and rumor mongering, then address those issues. And finally, please understand that ever since the governor's rule has taken place, the level of escalation of some of the real problem areas, from stone throwing to all sorts of other minor attacks, these have been relatively controlled, because even the local political leaders and the people who are the champions of the people there, like the Abdullahs and the Muftis, they are relatively out of business ever since the governor's rule has been there, and they've not got a free hand to keep adding to confusion.
Yes.
Miss Mufti should look into the mirror and ask herself questions, that how she got the police to file an FIR against the army. Are we two different countries? Are we fighting two different enemies? Or we are all on the same side? Whose side is she on? And even Mr. Omar Abdullah's assertions that, you know, when you had that Gogoi case where he was trying to champion the case of some people who were trying to assault the election booth and assault the security and paramilitary forces, he was trying to champion them. I mean, what are we talking about? Are these people the ones that New Delhi finds only at the end of the day the people to engage with?
Yeah, but I don't think the current establishment is going to be engaging with them at all, Maruf.
People that we can give them opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think the current establishment is going to engage with them at all.
Why do we reinforce failures?
They have gone after every single separatist, radical, and tried to put them behind bars. They have cracked down on their terror funding. And so where it is required to act tough and to crack down, that has been done. But when it comes to the citizens of Kashmir, normal people like you and me, they deserve an answer as well. What's happening around them? There is bound to be some amount of panic. Unfortunately, politicians in Delhi and in the valley are only fueling that and adding to that fear and feeding that fear by making comments about what could this troop deployment possibly be? Just a response to a terror threat? Or could it be more in terms of policy making or change in policy? We will have to wait and watch, and we will keep a close eye. For now, we do know that the Amarnath Yatris and the tourists have been warned to get out of the valley at this point of time. People have begun to stock up. In fact, just now, our reporter has sent us a message saying that even the district collector in the DC of Srinagar is issued a message saying we have sufficient stocks of all essentials, including food, fuels, medicines. Roads are open, replenishment is routine. People are requested to avoid hoarding and panic shopping. That's what's happening. So anybody who wants to have a view and speculate and rumor monger or thump their chests without knowing any facts, please keep in mind the impact it will have on the people who are living there, on the people in Kashmir when these kind of conversations begin. We'll keep you updated with facts. Thank you so much for joining us on debate number 1. Let's move on